TV, GH Today, with your TV royals. We're live on GH1 TV on DSTV channel 361. We're streaming live as well on Facebook. We're all over the world, and you can't just not be a part of this experience. Indeed, the Valentine's Day edition of our show is something to look forward to. Our one-on-one conversation, if you like, coming up in the next hour or so with the rap doctor, Ochame Kwame, in studio. Yes, he'll be sitting with King Calf, and it's all about love. So you want to just stick with or stay by your telephones still and keep watching until we get there. Remember as well that we have you three special couples, the lucky ones that are going to be headed to the Royal Century Hotel, just to enjoy the period. It starts from today through till the weekend, Sunday, 17th February. And so any day at all, once your name is picked and announced on the show, we'll share with you what that experience, though, will look like as we go along. So, yes, stay here. A couple of your messages coming through, and AU Farouk says, good morning. It is not surprising that all the allegations Mr. Martin Amidu made on former President Mahama was radically based on the so-called perceptions. Well, I hope when the vetting committee approves his nomination, he will not follow perceptions again. Thank you, AU Farouk. Dr. Abedi Kwadaso of Big Joe Shoes says, I'm highly optimistic that Mr. Martin Amidu and his officers will deal with any corrupt act in government. Okay, well, more messages as we go along. It's a review segment now, and I'll introduce my guests in a short while. Be reminded, though, that it's all about, once again, special energy drink, and of course, all the special drinks, including the malt that comes in different flavors. And we'll once again share those contact details should you want to get in touch for wholesaling, retailing, and of course for your personal use as well. We're live on GH1 TV. Breakfast review coming up now. All right, it's 7:20. I'm joined by one comrade, Murtala Mohammed. He was a former deputy minister for trade, a former member of parliament for Nantong, and as well, his wife is watching the show. Good morning, Mrs. You're welcome, comrade.
Good morning.
Okay.
And thanks for your mischief.
I
thought Nana would be the only person who would.
Really?
Who would
Nana. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you, man.
Nana Fredi Oforiatta, he's second vice chair, NPP Eastern Region, and he's as well here with us this morning.
You might add outgoing.
Say again?
You might add outgoing.
Outgoing. Are you seeking re-election or
outgoing.
Election? You're just exiting.
You
want to give others the chance, right?
Well, it isn't mine to give them. It's the electorate.
Okay.
I'm just bowing out.
Okay.
He's a chief too. He's not just Nana Asim.
All right. On that note, let me say a happy chocolate day to both of you. I'm talking about chocolates. It looks like our golden tree chocolates is under threat from a lot of these foreign manufactured chocolates, but the cocoa processing company, he's been speaking to this, and we're hopeful that they're putting in measures to save the situation. Okay, so the biggest news this morning, yes, it's captured in one of the papers, and I'll share.
Why would you consider it a threat?
Well, I mean, if indeed there are some figures that I thought were staggering. The fact that today's edition of your Gold Streets business, foreign chocolate imports hits $6 million in 3 years, as the cocoa processing company's production capacity dwindles. And so I found that a bit worrying.
Their capacity that's dwindled?
Yeah, their capacity has dwindled, and we're seeing all of these foreign ones come in as well. Yes, so, I mean, themselves are worried. And that's why I concluded by saying that hopefully they're putting in place those measures
they had some
to save the situation.
A few years ago.
They did. Yeah. They did. Okay, so that's the latest with the Gold Streets. I mean, with that particular company.
It's a worrying specter, honestly.
I think it is.
If something could be done about it. My understanding is that when the school feeding program or project was introduced, it was introduced with the understanding that they would factor in the provision of either chocolate or cocoa tea, if you like, for for students, because government itself is a huge, purchaser of commodities. So I think that if the Ministry of Education can take into consideration that, of course, with the Ministry of Trade and the Ghana Cocoa Board, I believe that would be one surest way. Because if you compare the domestic chocolate with the foreign one is just milk and sugar. They take a little of our cocoa and then they do that. I think that would help. It has medicinal values. The chain would have also helped cocoa farmers and others who are engaging in the cocoa production, directly or indirectly. I think something ought to be done about it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure though that the high quality cocoa content in the golden tree chocolate, that one you cannot doubt.
Ghana cocoa is the best.
Indeed.
It's the best.
Indeed. Okay, so having said that, it is 7:24, and we want to look at the biggest issue this morning. So, Ghanaian Times newspaper, the vetting of special prosecutor nominee, and there's a quote from Mr. Martin Amidu, who is still special prosecutor nominee until approval announced by the vetting panel of Parliament. So he says, well, I'm best man for the job. That's what he tells the panel. The Independent says, my job is not to fill up in Swam. Martin Amidu, the new crusading guide, Martin Amidu dazzles at vetting, says, I can't live in harmony with criminals. The Daily Heritage reported as Amidu shows resilience, grilled for 8 hours, says, I'm best choice for special prosecutor job. And it continues the Chronicle, I won't be zombie prosecutor. Martin Amidu will chase corrupt officials abroad. Let me pick your thoughts on the whole exercise that happened yesterday, just to set the tone for our conversation this morning. Nana?
Well, I didn't have the privilege of listening in throughout. It was a long vetting, and in fact, the length itself was something to discuss.
Indeed.
Whether it was the best approach. Could they not have probably spread it in two, continue today or something? I mean, that's something that's worth looking at. But the detail for me was very apt. In fact, probably they'd spread it over 2 days or 3. We'll probably get more than 8 hours, and we'll get better details still yet. What we got was very good, I thought. It exposed every side of the thinking process towards achieving this objective of getting a special prosecutor and therefore dealing with this canker called corruption. I thought it was a good process. The questions, some you'd wonder why. There was a certain trend, and it was repeated in different words from different voices and different mouths, but same primary objective of seeming to want to mar his reputation in one form or the other, for whatever reason, seemed more political than technical, if you will, as far as the job requirement is concerned. I thought he showed strength. His capacity was well exhibited. He showed that he knows his law. He proved that he stands by his word. Whatever he stands for, he didn't run away from. And for me, that's a strong...
Entirely the case, but we will dovetail into the issues. So yes,
that's purely an opinion. So it's not a matter of fact.
Indeed,
it's an opinion. So when you look into all of that, though, all in all, I thought it went well. What I had questions about is the limitation on questions. I've always wondered about that. If we're clear in our minds that we need to clean up or present something that must be cleaned or cleared of all issues, I don't know why we should be limiting people, questions to that. I've always wondered about that for vetting processes, for investigative processes. I know that it could also be endless, because if the truth is that Parliament is also a political body, and therefore entrenched positions could have you be repetitive, and therefore you may find people asking the same question over and over and over. Just one person could ask the same question.
Could that be the reason why that he appeared at a point very impatient?
Well, that would be, it's not the same point I'm making. I'm dealing with the matter of one person asking the same question in different ways, as opposed to different people asking. His frustration showed, and therefore the rest of us, when we recognized that it was the same trend, it showed that it was a bit ridiculous, asking the same question in different ways, trying to do the same thing and not succeeding and still pursuing it. That was a bit irritating. So if he showed it, like I said, I didn't watch through everything, so if he showed it at some point, one wouldn't be surprised.
Well, there are many who thought that that could be a bad,
well, 8 hours
posture
is not a joke.
for a prosecutor.
8 hours is not a joke.
No.
Dining, yeah, it's not a joke. So, and your frustrations will show. If we should always note that we're all not God. We're all humans. So in the case where, no matter who you are, in the case where you have opinions about issues, in one form or the other, it is supposed to come out. If it is strong enough and good enough, the system keeps you. If it's bad enough, the system will weed it out of you, and therefore you don't get to do what you're doing. So for me, if a character was exhibited, well, it lets us know who we're dealing with, and that's the essence of the process. Let's see how it turns out.
Right. Comrade.
Well, let me say good morning to you and my colleague, who is also a chief, and also the viewing public, and of course the good people of Nanton constituency. Since this is our preliminary comments, I think that I would say that yes, it was a long, tedious 9 hours, but this is not the first time that we would go through vetting for appointment where we sit for long hours. If you remember, my former boss, Dr. Spiogabra, was vetted for over 8 hours. Of course, it wasn't up to 9 hours, but it was over 8 hours, almost 9 hours. So this isn't the first time. And considering the office Dr. Spiogabra was being vetted for, and the office Mr. Martin Amidu was also being vetted for, you would understand that even if it had gone 10, 11, 12 hours, there wouldn't have been anything wrong with that. And I agree entirely with Nana that perhaps in the future we would have to devise a way by which we can, if like, stretch the vetting based on the kind of questions we want, and determine that by the number of days. There is nothing wrong with having the vetting, that should last for 2-3 days, as far as we want to get the kind of information that we want to get. We should also be mindful of the fact that in vetting they want to test the temperament of the person, and if you want to assess the temperament of a person, more so someone who is coming to discharge that huge responsibility of prosecution people, you would want to find out whether such a person would insulate his personal views and temperament over what the law says and what crime is. And I think that is the reason why some of these questions are asked. If you observed, even in the United States of America, their Senate, when they are vetting appointees of governments, they ask questions repeatedly. They ask those questions. Perhaps you can provide an answer that another person who's tend to ask questions thinking that the answers were not provided to his satisfaction. And since there is a limitation as to the number of questions you would ask, people would ask those questions. And I think that for me is very important. I find it extremely difficult to understand why Nana would say that they ask questions to embarrass him. No, I think that those questions are questions that people are going to provide answers. If people ask questions for you to either, I'm not too sure whether he said it, but ask questions more or less to embarrass the person, and, because that was what he said. He said that they asked questions to embarrass the man and blah blah. And I really don't think that
not exactly his words. I don't quite remember him using.
But that's the understanding
that you got. Well, I'm sure that he would. I don't
think that those questions were personal. There are questions that they are asking. The over 27 million Ghanaians wouldn't have the opportunity to ask questions. Even with the long hours of vetting that we had, I still think that there are people who would feel that certain questions that they expected to have asked were not asked. And that is why I say that I agree.
Like
that
what?
I'm saying
questions?
that there will still be people who would think that certain questions that they expected were not asked. You can't ask all the questions, you know. So I'm just saying that.
But did you get the critical ones that you thought
I think that yes,
he should have touched on?
I think that I thought I was just making. I didn't want to go into the detail. But
I think we're just launching into the conversation.
I think that for me, one thing that is instructive was the fact that he made some admissions. He made admissions that a lot of the allegations he leveled against President Mahama and his appointees were based on perception. And it was interesting that he said that intelligence. And I was wondering whether he was an intelligent officer. I said, look, as a former deputy minister for interior, that I have processes of getting intelligence that is not verified. And on that basis, and for me, the admission that yes, it was perception. And I asked myself, how many people's image have been tarnished in this country as a result of a so-called perception? How many people that you would come out and make serious and preposterous allegations against no less a person than a sitting president and his appointees, only for you to come to set under oath through vetting and say that they were perceptions? He didn't have any shred of evidence to have made those conclusions. And I was
considering the office that he's supposed to be occupying. What do you make of this pronouncement now? Some have said that this could dent his credibility.
Well, I really,
do you share the view?
No, I really don't think it will dent his credibility. He gave one assurance, and it is important that I state that. He said, look, regardless the things I said, even though I've admitted that yes, some of them, the things I said were perception, I am now coming to work as a neutral person, someone who is tasked with the huge responsibility of prosecuting people. And in such prosecution, there isn't any political coloration. In such prosecution, there isn't any family or whatever relations. Look, you see, well, one thing we must understand in this country, the process of prosecuting people wouldn't change and can't change with the appointment of Mr. Martin Amidu or any other person in the office of a special prosecutor. The processes are going to be the same. You go to a court to indeed for prosecution with evidence and the law. I really don't think that you go to court and prosecute people on perception. I don't also think that you go to court and prosecute people on some unknown intelligence that you have had. Every single allegation for which reason there is going to be a prosecution will be subject for scrutiny. And for me, that is one instructive thing about it. I have maintained that we didn't even need this office as long as you have the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. He made one statement that for me was extremely instructive. He said that His Excellency the President told him that the reason why he's appointing him is that not many people have confidence in the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. He made this categorical statement. I really don't want to believe that the President would have told him that. I really don't want to believe that. There is every confidence people have in the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. And as a matter of fact, the Minister of Justice and Attorney General over the years have prosecuted people in ascertained conviction. The concerns that people have raised over the years has to do with the need for us to insulate the Minister of Justice from the Attorney General because of this perception. Now, for him to make, I want to believe that perhaps he didn't report His Excellency the President.
But considering the issue we're dealing with, we're talking about corruption issues, and I'm tempted to ask how many people in this country we have, how do you call it, prosecuted for corruption?
No, but you see,
I mean,
you see, in law, I mean, one of the difficult cases to be able to establish for which you can attain conviction between civil and criminal law is criminal law. Civil law says you have it proven beyond doubt. Criminal law says that proven beyond any reasonable doubt. So at any point in time, when you have allegations that are made, those allegations are going to be subjected to scrutiny. And you must prove beyond any reasonable doubt. And that is the reason why in most cases, criminal cases, for you to attain conviction, it takes a longer period. Sometimes 2 years, 3 years, we have witnesses to those incidences in Ghana. What is most important is that Mr. Martin Amidu is not coming to rewrite the criminal proceedings. He is not coming to the office is not coming with a new procedure as to how people can be prosecuted. He is coming to go strictly by the already set up rules and regulations, govern criminal, proceedings in this country. And that is why, but some of us, I think that the euphoria and the pop and pageantry, because there has been an appointment of a special prosecutor and therefore people are going to be sent to jail, all those things are going to be subjected to scrutiny. The positive thing about what happened yesterday was the fact that both the majority and the minority have all agreed that, look, unanimously let's approve him, despite the fact that some concerns were raised. Nana talked about the fact that there was a line of questioning by one side. Indeed, there was another line of questioning by the other side. And I think that all those things are things that we need not to gloss over. It was a very good exercise. Let's see what happens.
Okay, are you one of those people, though, who believe that the appointment of Mr. Hamidu and his subsequent zeal to deal with, the issue of corruption in our country would, bring about unnecessary fear and panic? Share with me exactly what your thoughts are on this on social media platforms. After the vetting, I heard Majority Chief Whip, Mr. Nindam. Yes, he spoke to the fact that, look, if you have stolen money, you should be writing your notes. If you are in public office now, you should probably be careful, because this is a man who is definitely going to deal with the issue of corruption. Because he spoke once again about the fact that corruption has no party colors. And so he will do whatever he has to do to ensure that whoever is caught in the frame or in the box is brought to book. Nana, I think that Murtala makes a lot of, points. He talks, first of all, about his neutrality. For instance, considering statement that he's, put out in his articles about both sides. You think that he will be able, for instance, to stay neutral and deliver?
Well, the point made by the Honourable Nindam,
yes,
is the ultimate objective of this whole process. Ultimately, the idea is don't dare, and if you have, watch out. And that's what we need.
It's obvious the signals have been sent across.
And you see, we're all sitting here on this particular matter because of perception. Perception. It's a matter of fact. So we cannot dodge that. Typically, when things are put out, whether those who like to do propaganda, whether it's for propaganda value, those who want to deal with fact, whether it's fact value, a lot of the time, its reception and acceptance is built on perception. So the point about perception from Mr. Hamidu was not wrong. on the issues that he wrote about and all, they were not wrong. If they were, people would have stood up firmly against what he said and challenged him where they would have wanted to go. But they didn't. Because
but he's not able to exactly say that this is exactly what it was. But now he's telling us that these are things that I perceived of these persons that I alleged them to have committed.
I'm saying that at the time that he stated that, those who were affected could have confronted the issue. They could have confronted the issue. When we talked about corruption in the campaign, when the NPP raised the matter of corruption in the campaign, we lived based on what we had heard, certain one or two things one had seen, and then we put out the message. When victory came to us, over the last year, one of the arguments from the other side is, you're the ones who said you're going to come and catch people, why haven't you done anything? So they were also building a perception that we were wrong and that there was nothing. It was all about perception. Now we're going to deal with facts. Because if you do not have the record, whether you're on the MPP side or the NDC side or whichever side, if you do not have the facts, you cannot go and prosecute a case in court. And Mr. Hamidu yesterday was very clear about that. If we're not able to remove ourselves from dealing with a public statement for which he can be held responsible and his actual work, then we're in trouble. He exhibited that yesterday, and I think I was happy with it. On whether the president said that people had lost confidence, I am sure the president would have said that because he said it publicly. On many occasions, we have all justified that in questions. I remember when the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, was being vetted to be Attorney General, One of the questions raised, and my memory serves me right, it was raised by Mr. Alban Bagbe, was the question of whether we should separate the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice. That is based on a perception of not having a lot of confidence in the system as it exists. And now, in order for us to deal with the matter of corruption in particular, the reason people have issues with it, the reason it catches fire when it is raised as a campaign issue, the reason people talk about it, even after the campaign, when you're actually in office, people want to deal with the matter of corruption, is that it is a problem that people have. And people believe that the system has not been dealing with it properly. So there is a lack of confidence in the system. And the first port of call on this matter is always the Attorney General and Minister of Justice's office. It's not about the individual in the office. It's about the system. And so if that is what Mr. Amidu said, and I didn't hear him, I can reason out that it makes sense because it could be true. That's the reason we're here in the first place on this matter. Then on the matter of, by the way, my brother made a statement I think was very unfair and unjustified in any way. When he talks about the matter of intelligence and then raises the question about whether Mr. Amidu himself is intelligent, that's insulting. Yes, he did. I wrote it down. I wrote it down.
I said that.
Yes, you did. He play it back. Yeah, I wrote it down.
His words exactly.
Yeah. You said you wonder if he's intelligent. I don't know why. Yeah,
okay. I'm sure it might have been a slip.
I wrote it down.
I never said that.
I didn't quite remember.
So
Never.
Check. You record this. You don't just play for play. I wrote it down.
Anyway, the viewing public will make their conclusions.
Yeah. So, you know, we should be very wary about how we speak on these matters. Now, for me, this whole process was very crucial. Very crucial. And by the way, the issue is not about whether people would be embarrassed. It's not out of, they wanted to destroy him. It was not about embarrassing him. That's what I was trying to state. That
why would anybody want to destroy him?
Because they are afraid.
I mean, but a lot of the questions were legitimate questions.
Where's the legitimacy? Why did you take? What's the point about asking a question, wanting to pose a question about a description of Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa?
Listen, I personally have issues. And when we started the show, I was asking Kafui, for instance, if we probably going forward should begin to take a second look at how the vetting exercises are done, so that we are focusing on the issues. You know, so that I was asking.
I won't hinder anybody from asking questions. Like I said earlier,
do you think that
as far as I'm concerned, we should open it up for people? Maybe there are even more crucial things to, you know. So I have no problem with that. I'm saying what comes out of it is what we get to deal with. We have the benefit of hindsight on this matter. Now, I'm saying that what's the value of an intended question, for example, to query about Mr. Okudzeto, a description of Mr. Okudzeto Ablakwa? You want to create a situation that this man is vindictive. You want to create a situation that this man is of a certain character. What does all that seek to do? It seeks to build a certain image so that you can destroy the person. That's what they sought to do. Embarrassment is a soft word, and I didn't intend to think that you thought you were trying to embarrass him. Now, the substantive matter is this, and he made that statement. I wish I could quote him verbatim, that the political elite in particular have bullied and cheated this country and the Ghanaian for so long by being festering and allowing corruption to fester and in all forms, and that he was there to make sure that that was cut down as much as possible. He said that if for nothing else, if he could set up the structure alone, just so that people know, talk about perception, can even perceive that, hey, if I do this thing, I'll be in trouble. I remember a cousin of mine teasingly, the minute, as soon as the news broke that the president had announced Mr. Amidu, he says, I'm moving to Togo. I said, why? He said, even if I think it's this man might come after me. I'm saying that just that image. He said, if he's even able to achieve that, he would have done his part. And for me, that is most satisfying, because that is the objective. The objective is to cut down this rot. So when you now suddenly raise funny questions, he's too old,
okay,
the law, and you want to, and meanwhile the law doesn't even cover you, and all those other things that are coming up. Well, yes, it's politics. The reality is that we all seek to deal with this matter of corruption. When it is all said and done, I remember years ago, Mr. Kandapa was managing a foundation that had to do with financial malfeasance in Africa. And the argument was that we lose some $3 billion every year just through corruption alone. So when the statement was made yesterday, that if we're able to slice it by a huge margin, to cut it down, we might even end up not needing it. Or Indeed. If we do, it will be heavily reduced. So for me, it's being achieved.
One other thing that I thought probably could be a disincentive to a fight against corruption, when he suggested that he's likely to settle some of the cases out of court. No, I don't know what you make of it.
But settling cases out of court is also legal. I mean, even in dispute resolution, whether through the legal process or even in social dispute, there is always consensus building. That, in fact, there are cases that in the court, depending on the parties, either the plaintiff or the accused, you can decide that you want to settle the case out of court. If it is not a criminal case, if it is a civil case, the court can decide that based on the request that your lawyers put in, you can settle it out of court. But let me state that basically, I never even used the word intelligence throughout my submission. For my brother chief to ascribe that to me, that is most unfortunate. I think that the viewing public...
You didn't use the word.
I never even used the word intelligence, let alone questioning the intelligence of Mr. Martin Amidu. I haven't said that. The viewing public would make their conclusions. But basically, it's important for us to understand. This is a person who indicated repeatedly that he was an advocate of the defense of constitutional rule and democracy. Now, the same constitution says that people cannot be pronounced guilty until they are proven guilty by a competent court of jurisdiction. You wrote articles in which you concluded people were criminals. You described a former president as a looter and his brigade of looters. You described that repeatedly. That goes beyond perception. That is tarnishing the image of people without a shred of evidence. And I'm saying that this was something that came up. The man himself, who has written several articles, ironically, he couldn't even remember some of the things he said. They put those specific questions to him. And Honorable Muttaka asked an intelligent question. He said that, look, you are an advocate of constitutional rule. You defend rule of law. And the law itself says that you cannot pronounce people guilty until proven. Yet you went about and said that those people were thieves, they were criminals without any shred of evidence. That is not perception. If I have a perception that yes, that I perceive or I suspect that this person is engaged in ABCD, that is in the realm of perception. Today, Nana, if I sit down and say that Nana is a gay because I perceive him to be so, and this thing would have been published in the newspapers, these things would have been everywhere. When I have no shred of evidence, I would have tarnished your image. And that is the point. Or you get up and say, Mutala is a criminal. Without any shred of evidence, the publications will be done, my image would have been tarnished, and then you come for vetting under oath. They ask you to substantiate on the allegations you made against Mutala or the allegations Mutala made against you. Then I say, oh, it was just perception. And I really think that that is the reason why people are saying that, I mean, it's not appropriate. And in going forward, all of us, that you don't peddle falsehood about people. President Mahama was called all kinds of names in this country. You have the current president, His Excellency President Nanado, who himself admitted at the media encounter, when they put the question to him about prosecution, he said, look, a lot of the allegations people make, you go into it and you realize that there is nothing to it. Yet those allegations were made. If we want to strengthen and grow our democracy, we need to be moving away from that. There is nothing wrong with fighting corruption, and all of us have agreed that let's fight it, but let's do it with sincerity and honesty. And I believe that he came across as somebody who was extremely vindictive, who is unforgiving, and who peddled falsehood against people who do not have. He said that the Alhaji Mama Idrisu was interested in wanting to be a running mate. That is absolutely false. Alhaji Mama Idrisu didn't have the opportunity to respond on that platform. Yet he made that allegation. He made another allegations against Obeda Samuel and said he was interested in being a running mate. Yet Mr. Obeda Samuel didn't have the opportunity to come and deny that. Yet he made those allegations. In one breath he says, I don't want to make allegations against people because they won't have the opportunity to come and respond. Yet you made series of allegations against people. That is, for me, is extremely worrying.
And for you, in one breath as well, you think that he was vindictive, but in another breath you think he'll be neutral.
You see, I said that he came as someone who is so temperamental, as someone who is so vindictive. However,
and you think it might not all go well for the role?
No, he said something. He said that, look, I am not coming to do anything outside the law. And like I said, The procedure, the prosecutorial procedures can't change with Mr. Martina Midu's appointment. If he comes in and he thinks that he wants to prosecute people on perception and vindictiveness, he'll be profoundly embarrassed in the court. We have seen many people who have been. He has lost cases even as Minister of Justice before. So the point I'm making is that yet he may come across as that, but when he goes to court to prosecute people on perception, that he had no shred of evidence, he will be hugely embarrassed.
Okay, I wish we had time to continue this conversation, but I promise you we're definitely going to, continue at 11:30 when the news team joins us, and of course in a subsequent bulletins. A lot of questions and people speaking to the fact that he probably might be too controversial, and that that could be a setback. Do you as well foresee a possible clash between him and the Attorney General? I mean, all of these questions are coming up, and then I know that a lot of you have a lot of expectations. Let's see how well that all of these expectations will be managed. And I promise you once again, newsroom at 11:30, this evening at 6:30 on GH1 News Tonight with the news team. We'll get all of those details, and of course in the subsequent days to come. Happy Chocolate Days to you once again.
Happy Chocolate.
Do you want to send any messages out to your loved ones?
On what, Valentine?
Yes.
I don't celebrate.
You don't
Valentine.
celebrate? Why?
Why should I? I will celebrate Chocolate Day.
Okay,
but I don't celebrate Valentine.
Do you celebrate Valentine's? Any message for any special person?
Well, my message is to Beswa. Beswa didn't let me respond to Murtala, but
you spoke
two
times.
I
spoke 2 times.
And I'll bring you back. Not to worry, you know how we do it here. So yes, thank you once again, gentlemen. Right now, though, it's all about love because we're celebrating this special day. And my colleague Ridwan Karim Dini Osman, he's somewhere, out and about, just so we can get the feel on the ground exactly how people are marking this day. Ridwan, you're live. Hello, Ridwan. Red, can you hear me? No?
Yeah, I can hear you, Beswa.
Oh, you can. Okay, so tell us where you are and what's going on there now.
Well, Beswa, this morning I'm coming to you live from Tudu, an enclave which is part of the Central Business District. And we know that today is Valentine's Day, a day for gift sharing, showing love, and all of that. But we know that traditionally, Valentine has been about sharing gifts and all of that, and when you come here you see all manner of merchandise, and you see
about their hopes
of people who have come here to shop, and of course the traders are here cashing in as well. So essentially what I'm going to do is to find out what people's plans are as far as Valentine's Day is concerned. Madam Pache Frozen.
Pastor friend is Cynthia.
Okay. Now Valentine,
oh, we dey hunu su kra, ye ntoshe. Ubia nyama na ye jira ha sa ujira so kwa na.
All right, well, we'll get back to Ridwan. We'll fix that technical problem and bring him back. We obviously want to find out exactly, what the feel is like on the ground and how all of you are celebrating the Valentine's Day today. We're still live on GH1 TV. We have a lot of conversations coming up around the day, and we want to hear from you as well. If you have any messages, just send them through to all our social media platforms. Let me just say a quick one. It is a happy 14th anniversary of proposing to Mrs. Ishen. This is coming from my big brother, Benefifi Ishen, and you said that she accepted your love, and forever you continue to be together. You love her so much, and you're wishing her happy Valentine's. Happy Valentine's to you as well. Thanks for staying.